Hello, guys, and welcome to the show. My name is Jumoke Adeyemi. With me on the show today is a trauma coach and a sex education expert, Layo Oyawoye.
Thank you for having me, Mo.
Thank you. And so today we'll be dealing with issues, situations that had to do with abuse and trauma, because I know you're an expert in that area, and so would like to learn from your expertise and your wealth of experience. So the first thing I want to have you clarify for us is a lot of people do not know the difference between abuse and trauma. Some of us who are read may understand it, but not a lot of people understand what's the difference between somebody who's gone through abuse and trauma. So help us clarify that.
So abuse and trauma are different, but they have some similarities.
Right.
When someone has gone through abuse, or when you abuse someone, it's when you do not respect someone's rights.
Wow.
So in this case, we're talking about sexual abuse. It's when you do not respect someone's sexual rights.
Right.
A right to say a yes or a no.
Okay.
A right to say I want or I do not want.
Right.
All right. Now, trauma is in summary, an injury. Now, there are different types. There's a physical injury, right? That's when maybe you've gone through an accident. Doctors would also call that trauma.
Right.
Yes. Now, there is another one that is mental. It's also an injury. Yes, there's this.
Yeah. It's just not sane.
Yes, it's just not sane. The psychological injury. And this has to do with when things affect your emotions, you know, situations that affect your mind, affect your brain, affect your thinking, and ultimately affect your outlook to life, your relationship with yourself, with God, with other people.
Right.
All right. So that's the difference. Now, not all abuse are traumatic. Right. Not all abuse are traumatic, but most of it, and not everyone who's abused experience trauma symptoms, but most of the time, abuse can lead to trauma.
Right.
But they are different.
Okay, so is it safe to say that trauma is anything that inflicts injury?
Yes, of the mind.
In the mind,
yes.
or physically
or
in the body?
Yes.
So in the mind, we're talking maybe mentally
Mental,
or emotionally?
Yes.
Okay. And then we can look at, it may also be safe to say from your explanation that abuse is the denial of right.
Of rights, yes, ma'am.
And intrusiveness
yes,
into someone's life or privacy. Because again, I do understand and I know that abuse is not just sexual.
Yes.
It can be physical, it could be mental, it could be emotional.
It could be verbal.
And it could be verbal.
Yes, ma'am.
Absolutely. So anything that violates a person's right, whether you're speaking it or
you're
acting it
yes,
or you're inflicting it, is technically called an abuse.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. So the next thing that intrigues me that I would like to ask you, you know, that's very pivotal to our conversation is, so how do you, you know, like for a lot of people who either have been abused or have gone through trauma, what are the possible signs that someone is being sexually abused or has been sexually abused?
Okay.
What are the signs?
Okay, so there are different signs depending on the gravity of the abuse, depending on the length, how long it took, right? Also depending on the personality type
of the
individual.
Right.
And also depending on the age and gender. Right.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
Okay.
So for children, because they can't, you know, properly express what they are going through, what is happening to them, it takes a lot of observation from the parent, caregiver, or adult around to know that this child is being abused. All right.
Wow.
But for adults, especially if their abuse happened when they were a child, because the issues with abuse is that when it becomes traumatic, the effects are long-term.
Wow.
It doesn't happen and then it fizzles out.
Right.
Usually, symptoms begin to build up until there's a trigger. So I'm going to talk about children, right? Because they can't express themselves. There are different ways, you know. Many of them can cry a lot. But because we assume that children cry, you're not likely to think this child is likely to be going through abuse. You just assume that. For instance, crying was one of my own symptoms. I didn't know that until
because I like you to share your story.
Yeah, I'm going to share my story. It was one of my symptoms as a teenager.
You just cry.
I cried a lot.
Like without anything?
Without any triggers, without any provocation.
So is there some kind of emotional trigger or?
Yes. Okay. So sometimes.
Or how about if a teenager or a child starts to withdraw?
Yeah, I mean, there are many signs like that.
Yes,
withdrawal. They begin to withdraw. Their grades can begin to drop in school.
Right.
Yes. If they could become hyperactive as well. So it's not just withdrawal, and that's why I said depending on the personality type. If a child who's outspoken, who's an extrovert, is being abused, they can become hyperactive.
Oh.
You know, they are relatively jovial, they are here, they are there, but when they are going through abuse, as a way to cope with the pain, they mask it with more activity.
And hyper-niceness.
Yes. So they are extra, they are doing this, they are doing that, because they are children, they can't describe what they are going through. Right. Many of them do not even know what's going on. For instance, while I was being abused, I didn't know it was an abuse. I didn't know that this person was doing something wrong. It was painful. I was hurting, but nobody has talked about it. So I didn't know it was abuse. I didn't know it was something I could, express to anyone, right? So I cried a lot, all right? So,
and then the person would say, you better not tell anyone, because
that's the difference in my story, right? Because I know people would say that, oh, he said he threatened me. None of my abusers threatened me.
Oh.
None of them. But because I was not educated, I didn't think I could report it. Because you see, the issues of
and you couldn't explain the pain.
I couldn't explain it. I didn't know how to put it together because these were adults. In our days,
it didn't have any words in your child vocabulary.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
And in our days, adults seem to always be right. So if he was doing it, maybe it was probably okay.
Yeah, you just didn't understand.
I just didn't understand it. Right. So
Or you felt you just didn't understand it at the time.
Well, I felt I didn't understand it at that time because at some point, I was able to talk to a friend of mine, right, to say, you know what, I was in primary 6.
Oh, my goodness.
Right. See, this guy is doing this to me. What do you think I can do? Because I knew he was going to come in that evening. And I was trying to say, okay, how can I stop this evening? And I said, okay, let me talk to my friend. And she said, okay, let's go and let's go and confront him, you know. I'm just picturing both of us, you know, short girls. We raced to his house, you know, thinking that we're going to meet him at home and then confront him and tell him, if you come to my house again, I'm going to tell my parents. But we didn't meet him at home. Oh. We met his elder sister. And when we met his elder sister, of course, we were both confused. We didn't know what to do. But we felt that, okay, yes, at least we'll tell someone.
Okay.
So we spoke to her. And I was like, okay, this is what your younger brother is doing to me and all of that. And she looked at me and said that I was to blame. And said it was my fault. And said, you know, it was funny how that she didn't, okay, yes, she said I was lying. Yes, that it was my fault. And that I was always walking around. I mean, I was shocked. I couldn't move, you know. And so we all both just left in silence.
Was she like in disbelief?
She wasn't in disbelief. She didn't even ask me any questions. She didn't say when, where, how. She just went straight to attacking me. I mean, I was a young girl. I'm part of the late bloomers, right? So you couldn't say, oh, maybe I looked too mature. Yeah. I had all the breasts and all of that. None of that. There was nothing attractive about me at that time. And that was when I vowed I was never going to talk to anyone about it again because I felt no one would believe me. It's an issue with with sexual abuse victims. You're afraid no one will believe you.
Close in.
You close up. Because it's sensitive. You don't even know how to describe what they are doing or what they are touching.
There's no words to explicate it to an
adult, to people asking, right? So another sign is withdrawal. They may begin to experience some physical discomfort.
Right.
So when they begin to consistently complain about, oh, my private part is hurting, or
so parents need to pay attention.
You need to pay attention. You can't wave it off and say, oh, you're being a baby. You have to check private parts. Usually,
and then perhaps ask critical questions. Right.
Right. So, they could complain of body pains. For pre-teenagers, they may suddenly bloom, especially for girls. Yes.
When you say sexually bloom, what does that mean?
So that's what I'm trying to explain. So for girls, if this girl hasn't shown signs of puberty prior to sexual abuse,
right,
with sexual abuse, they suddenly begin to show fast signs of puberty. Wow. Because with sexual abuse, you are stimulating hormones in the body. So they can become busty, and you're wondering where is this coming from? Typically, a girl would grow gradually, over periods of years and all of that. But this one just suddenly comes up. Wow. So those are signs that you may need to look out for. And see, these are possible signs. It doesn't mean that when a girl grows so fast, then it means just ask questions to put your mind to rest.
Particularly if the child is complaining of playing in certain areas of her body that should probably not be. Right.
And there are other signs, like some of the things we have mentioned before. They may complain about not wanting to sleep alone. They may want to always have adults around, right? They may want to be alone also.
What about, because in counseling, in pastoral counseling and some professional counseling, I've encountered people who say, or who have described when they see the person who is the abuser, they start fidgeting or they run away or they cringe.
Yes.
Is that a sign to watch out for as well?
Yes, that's a sign. And that's why I said that some of them would may not want to go to certain places or meet certain people because they know.
Or when you tell them go get something from so and so, they withdraw, or they look scared.
Yes.
Or they complain they don't want to go.
Goosebumps. Right. Some children you'd ask some children to go, buy something across the streets. They would usually joyfully do it. But right now, they don't want to do it. They don't want to go.
So what a child normally would joyfully do, and now they are
complaining.
They don't want to go, or they show signs of fear of going there. You want to ask questions.
Ask questions. Don't assume that, because parents can assume that, oh, you're just being lazy, or you just don't want to do this for me. Before you make that conclusions, ask questions.
Right.
And questions, the way you question is also important, and that's why I usually recommend therapy for children and their parents when they see certain signs. Because there's a way you ask questions to get the answer. Because even though you are the parents, they don't know how you're going to take it. So if a child is being abused and you're asking questions, what did you say happened? What did you say? All of those things will further push them into fear. Right? You want to first of all establish that, you can talk to me. I can take it.
Maybe asking the question in a very calm manner that gives the child a sense of psychological safety.
And you don't ask questions that point accusing fingers at the child. By saying, oh, was it the place I sent you to the other time? Or was it the place I said you should not go the other time? You already
or could it be that you were careless? Did you?
You're already pushing the blame on the child. Or were you wearing that clothes I said you shouldn't wear? You already put the blame on the child. A sexual abuse victim already feels blamed without anyone blaming them.
Wow.
You already feel blame, especially if your trauma response was a freeze response. So there are three different responses.
Okay.
There's freeze, there's fight, and there's flight. Right. There's fawn. That's the unusual one. So mine was freeze. And for many years, I blamed myself. Every time my abuser comes in, because it was at different times, I had no response. I'm just there, receiving instructions and answering all the questions.
So let me having laid out the signs, let me ask you a further question. You said whilst you were speaking that parents should learn to ask their children questions. What sort of questions should you ask?
Okay. So one of it is, how do you feel? If this child comes to say, or okay, so for instance, you are the one that notices the signs.
Right.
That this child is withdrawing, they don't want to go to certain places. You want to ask, are you okay?
Why don't you want to go?
Why don't you want to go
You
there?
can
Is there
talk to
something
me.
you need to tell me? Is there something I need to know?
Is anyone hurting you?
Is anyone hurting you? I need you to know that you can trust me. Or is there someone else you like to talk to? Let them see. In therapy, what we do is to let the clients know that there's shared power. I'm not like the Lord of all. I'm just, if you don't want to answer I tell my clients, if you don't want to answer my question, you can tell me you'll pass, and that's fine. Let your child know that if they don't want to talk to you, they can say it. That way, you let the child feel a sense of safety. Like I have a choice here, because many sexual abuse victims never had the choice.
Wow.
You are giving them back the power. You're giving them back the choice to say that you can talk to someone else if you don't want to talk to me. Do you want me to call Auntie so-and-so? Maybe this person is close to your child. Do you want me to call Auntie so-and-so? Or do you think you talk to the pastor? When they see that...
Would you want to talk to a doctor? Would you want to
yes.
Talk to a pastor, someone who doesn't know us? Or...
Yeah, exactly. Although talking to a doctor is also tricky, because they feel like, am I sick? Is something wrong with me?
Okay.
Right? So you want to take it one step at a time. Do you want to talk to someone else apart from me? Should I call your dad? Or should I call your mom?
Do you want to talk to your teacher?
Your teacher, right? So let them know all of that. So their response would determine what other questions you want to ask.
So how do you know that all these people, do you want to talk to this person, that those people also could handle those kind of crises? Because again, if I tell my child to go talk to an aunt who probably has a relationship with that abuser, and the aunt doesn't know how to handle that, would that not be counterproductive?
Absolutely, it would be. So usually what I advise is, if your child wants to talk to somebody else,
right,
prepare the person. I don't know what my child wants to tell you, but I need you to be prepared. These are things you shouldn't do. You shouldn't show alarm. You shouldn't report it to someone else.
Confidentiality.
Confidentiality. Just prepare the person. So, for instance, children talk to me a lot. So I have a book called My Teen's Diary. So many girls pick it up on the street and they just call me and I don't know them. And I see that this matter they are discussing, their parents need to know so we can stop the abuse, right? So usually what I'll do is to talk to the parents first and say, your child wants to tell you something. It's not something you would, that's palatable. But if you want us to get results from this conversation, you can't panic.
Harass the child.
Yes, you can't harass the child. You can't do so. We prepare the parents' mind. And I usually say, you know what? If you have questions, of course you would have questions. Of course you would bring them back to me, not to the child. This child can't help you.
Right.
That child is not your therapist. So you can't dump it on the child. All right. So we usually would prepare the person.
Because the parents will also need some therapy, because it could be shocking.
It would be trauma for the child.
Yeah, for the parents to know that my child is being abused by someone that I love or that I trust.
Absolutely.
Right.
In fact, what I had to do with my parents, so because recently I've had to share my story a lot with many people, and in a book I recently released. So one of those days, my parents saw an interview on TV, and it caused like a little family. So I had to call them, both of them, and say, I know that this would have impacted you in different ways. Are there things, would you like to talk to me about it? Because I've been through it, I'm fine. You are just getting to understand that I went through this.
Know it.
So it's fresh for you. But I can help you in this case. I'm a professional. I can help you in this case. My mom went like, oh yes, my mom expressed herself to me. My dad wasn't the man, right? But I'm glad
I can only imagine what she would have gone through, like embarrassed, shocked.
And my parents are so loving. Were loving and are still so loving. I had the best childhood, if not for the abuse. I had the most an amazing childhood, right? And I think that the only thing that went wrong there was lack of sensitization and education.
Education.
Educating them on age-appropriate sexuality education is your weapon.
Whoa.
For them to say,
but a lot of parents don't know that.
They don't know that. In fact, when I go to places and I tell parents, many of them are like, oh, you're going to mess up with their innocence. These children do not know anything. And I'm like, that's
they know more than you think.
Wrong, right? These children, okay, so let's say that your children are innocent. They don't know anything. Are they moving with other innocent children? Are they moving in the school bus? Are everybody in that school bus innocent? Right. So you need your child to have something they can use when you are not there.
At least prepare them to be aware.
To be aware.
Socially aware that such things do happen.
So that when things are happening out there without your knowledge,
they know what to do. They're equipped.
Yes. They know.
They have the tools.
In our days, this was not a thing.
Right.
All right. Parents didn't know what to do. Didn't even know it was happening. You know. And sexual harassment is such that there are things that we take for granted. And we don't know that it's actually sexual abuse. So my sexual abuse is what we call digital rape. It involves fingers. That's what we call the digits, right? That's different from rape through intercourse. All right? So when somebody says, oh, he grabbed me, he grabbed my breast, or he kissed me without my... You don't think that's sexual abuse. And it is sexual abuse. It is a criminal offense.
Right. It is.
So because all of these things we have normalize them, like, oh, what's the big deal? You were passing by and it just hit your butt. What's the big deal? There is a big deal.
It is a big deal.
Right?
Because the right of that individual was violated.
Yes, that's why we call it abuse.
Yeah.
You didn't take permission.
Abnormal use.
Yes.
Right. That's the meaning of abuse.
It's a power play, all right? Because you're a guy, or because you're an older woman, because it's not only girls that get sexually abused. Boys get sexually abused as well.
I've counseled men who have been abused by helps and aunties.
Right. And so all of these things in our days made it look like, oh, was this really... Yeah. And so because of that, many people in my generation went through abuse, both boys and girls.
Right.
And we didn't even know.
Right.
Many people didn't know that.
Wow. Thank you so much. So I don't want us to zero it just on kids or children's abuse, because I know that even adults, as adults, get abused. What would you say? How would you counsel an adult man or woman? Because again, like we now know and are more educated to know that the abuse is, of course, more with girls or women, but we are also aware that men or boys get abused. So what do you say? We've dealt with children. What do you say to adults who are being abused? So case in point, abuse at the place of work. Someone who just all of a sudden, calls someone into their office in a guise for an assignment and then grabs them, or finds that the lady or the gentleman goes into the bathroom in the office and then follows them in there, and tries to touch them. Those kind of harassments. Or a woman who lives in a house, she's in her 20s, she's over 18, lives in a house with an uncle or a stepfather or something, and is being abused by that person. Or different cases. Or now we are aware of young men who are being constantly abused sexually by older men.
Yes.
So what do you say to people in these categories of abuse? How did they handle it? How did they deal with it? How did they get out of the abusive situation?
Okay. Thank you for asking that, Mom. So adults have a little advantage over children because now you're older enough to be able to defend yourself.
Right.
So, and there are different ways you can defend yourself.
Talk to me. I'd like to know those.
Right. So, one of the ways, depending on the situation, the circumstance, who the person is, and I want to open this up also beyond sexual, right? If this person is always verbally abusing you,
right,
or all of those things, or domestic abuse, all of those things, you can defend yourself. You do not have to suffer in silence. When people do not defend themselves by either speaking up, speaking up includes reporting the person. We all even need to know what our rights are.
Whistleblowing in the place of work, for instance. Yeah.
You can't report it. There's an HR policy that protects people from such cases.
Right.
There would be a reporting line. There would be a process of reporting such cases.
Yeah.
Right. But I want to beam light on people who don't report because they're afraid. And if you're listening to me and that is you, I get you. I feel you. Your feelings are valid. Your fear is real. You should be afraid because you're afraid of losing your job. You're afraid of, okay, if I leave this guy, what else becomes of me? You're afraid of the financial issues that come with it. You're afraid of the name calling. Because especially in Africa, that's what we do. We do not focus on the perpetrator. We do not talk about the perpetrator. We are focusing on the victim, the person in pain. So you're wondering, how am I going to cope with the stigma? Some of you are even thinking, my children, if they hear this is happening, wouldn't they stigmatize my children? I hear you. But I'm saying that if you do not defend yourself or protect yourself, your children are going to, they're going to be affected by you staying in that job. I don't care how much it pays you, because there's a ripple effect. So this is how it happens. When you've been through sexual abuse or any form of abuse, you endure it. See, abuse are more difficult when you've had to go through it for a long time. Abuse impacts the brain, especially the prefrontal cortex, the one right behind your forehead. That is where your sense of self is. That is where compassion is. That is where critical thinking is, problem solving is. If you endure abuse for a long time, it is impacted. It's almost rendered useless for want of
so the person may start going through dysfunctionality.
Yes. You start living in your survival brain. We call it the reptilian brain. It's behind you. That's what you start living in. Because you would now see everything and everyone through the lens of your trauma, of your abuse. So when you are supposed to look at a problem and problem solve, you are emotionally attacking it. You are not solving the problem. You are just being emotional about it. Right. So your child comes home, something is going on in school, and instead of you to say, okay, sit down, how do we solve this? You are screaming and shouting, oh, this. You're not helping that child. So I'm saying that
there's no focus on the issue.
You are just being emotional. And you can be so emotional you feel that you are making progress. You are not. The matter is still there.
Wow.
So you are not able to help your child, and it begins to break relationships. When you're emotional about everything, it affects your work, it affects your relationship with your children. That's why, some children grow up and they had a fantastic relationship with their parents while they were growing up. But now as an adult, they can't. That relationship is strained because you've not healed from your trauma. Them becoming adults is triggering you. And so situations are happening that is causing, an altercation between both of you. You still love them, they still love you, but something is just not working. You endure trauma that you should have defended yourself from.
So it's kind of the symptoms of prolonged trauma.
Yes, ma.
Right.
So I'm saying that you should be able to stand up for yourself, report this person or these people.
Right.
Sometimes you have to be physical. Somebody walks up to you in the toilet. You've got to shove them off you.
Okay, so get physical.
Yes, absolutely.
Self-defense, physical self-defense.
Yes, ma'am.
I think that's the reason some people actually, because, that's the reason some people go to learn martial arts and all those kind of taekwondo and all those defense things.
Yes.
And I think it may be good for people to teach their children.
Yes, how to
self-defense. Yeah.
If this person does not have a weapon, they don't have a gun or a cutlass that they can injure you, it's just them,
Even with those, it is taught that part of the things that are taught is how to first get rid of the weapon.
Yeah, okay. That's also, in self-defense.
Yes.
Getting rid of the weapon and finding a way to escape. That is if you can. All right?
If you can.
So, yes, that's if you can. So, you can report them. You can resign and leave the job.
Absolutely.
You can resign. Because one of the things we want to also find out in therapy is, are you safe in your body? Are you safe in your space?
Environment, yeah.
If you are not safe in your space, there is a way we will walk you through living that environment.
Right.
Because not being safe in your physical space, it affects you mentally.
Even the performance.
Yes.
The work performance.
Yes.
Is
You're not
affected.
productive because you go to work every day, you have palpitations, you're afraid.
Fighting the abuser.
Yes. So you can resign, you can leave.
Right.
I mean, depending on the circumstance, is it a boss, is it a colleague, is it whoever it is.
So all of this techniques and tools that you're giving us can work when the person is an outsider. When the abuser is an insider, a family member, or someone who lives with it, what happens?
I mean, it works both ways.
Right.
It works both ways. So, for instance, this person is your dad.
Or stepfather.
Or stepfather.
Or uncle.
Or, exactly.
Or aunt. Or,
right? And you live together in the same space. If they are children, reporting to the parents would work.
Okay.
All right? If they are adults, you don't even just pack your bags and leave. Or report to somebody who there's in Nigeria, there are people referred to as Olori Ebi, you know, who can call this person to order. All right? It's just sad that, especially when it has to do with parents.
Right.
When it has to do father, stepfather, some mothers want to protect their marriage to the detriment of their children.
Child, yeah.
That's very sad. I can't even wrap my head around it, right?
It does happen, though.
Yes, it happens. It happens. I've seen cases, right? But in that instance, it means that you have to be your own protector. Your mother isn't protecting you in that case.
Yeah.
Your father. So find a space. And that's why it's also good to have a community outside of your family. In therapy, we always want to ask for your support group, your community, people you can run to. Do you have people in church you can meet who would say, you know what, pack your bags, come into my home, you're going to be fine. And we have several NGOs, right, who have spaces, living spaces for sexual abuse victims. So just so they can be safe in their environment.
In fact, I just wanted to ask if this is part of the physical defense that you're talking about, because it's critical also for people to know they can physically defend themselves.
Yes, ma'am.
And at least get away
yes,
from that point, or call for an attention from those around. So, there have been, places of where I've read or suggestions made of hitting the person in the face.
Okay. Yes.
Close to the eye, so that by the time they black out, you are gone.
You can escape.
Or hitting them in the dot area,
yes,
so that by the time they are wriggling in their pain, you are out. Is that part of?